It begins with a small sound you learn to ignore. The kettle clicks off in the kitchen, a slipper scrapes the hallway, and you fold the towel because no one else will. You are 8 years old and you sit very still at the table, palms warm from a cup you did not finish, watching the room for signs of calm. The house smells faintly of coffee and lemon cleaner. In psychology, there is a name for what happens next: parentification. It is when a child becomes caregiver and emotional buffer for an adult who should be the one protecting them. You learn to hold space for someone else, and in doing so, you hollow out the space you were allowed to be small. Today, we will trace how that silence becomes habit, what it does to your body and your relationships, and practical steps you can take to start listening to the inner child that has been waiting to speak. Parentification works quietly and with force. Picture Sarah, the mother, speaking in a voice that cuts like glass, Tom, the father, retreating into a room with the door closed, Maria, the aunt, leaving bills on the table with a shrug, Lucas, the brother, storming out and slamming a car door, and Mr. Alvarez, the neighbor, knocking to ask why the house is loud. The child learns to read tone, not words. The mechanism is simple and brutal at once. When caregivers fail to regulate their own anxiety, the child senses an unmet need and steps in. Neurobiology follows behavior. The stress response of cortisol and adrenaline patterns the developing brain to expect volatility. Emotional tasks that belong to adults become training exercises for a child. What begins as survival becomes a default mode: hypervigilance, a constant monitoring of faces, a practiced quickness in smoothing ruffled moods. A quote from a clinician seems to fit: "You were safety for them, and in being that, you forgot how to be safe for you." That recalibration shows up in body and mind. You sleep 5 hours and wake as if you never rested. Your stomach tightens before a knock on the door. You find yourself apologizing first, even when you did nothing wrong. The sensory list is specific. The chair creaks with the weight of responsibility, a lamp hums in the corner like a small alarm, your hands retain the scent of soap and the faint grit of chores, your ears catalog every footstep on the stairs. The emotional list is clearer: hypervigilance, numbing, chronic guilt, a sense that pleasure is risky. Over time, the child develops a mask of competence that feels like armor, but it is also thin and exhausting. Clinically, this is seen as a pattern of somatization, where physical symptoms hold the story the words cannot. It is not moral failing, it is adaptation. There are signs in adult life that map back to that silence. In relationships, you may be the fixer, always ready to solve a
Avoiding conflict has been rewarded. At work, you may be the reliable one who never asks for help and burns out when others like Priya take credit. Here is a brief scene that shows the pattern in action with dialogue that keeps returning to what is unsaid. "Are you okay?" Jenna asks, her voice soft and the kitchen light warm. "I am fine," you say, folding a dish towel, hearing your own voice low and even. "Are you sure? I can help," Jenna pushes, reaching for the plate. "No, it is okay. I will do it," you say quickly, fingers moving faster. "Why do you always take everything on?" Jenna says quietly, searching your face. "Because if I do not, it gets worse," you answer, and the words feel heavier than the plates. The exchange repeats the same transactions learned at home: calm, selling for peace. There is an undercurrent of reward and danger. The reward is attention given when you perform containment. The danger is the loss of self that grows slowly. If this paragraph echoes in your chest, pause now and notice that you are not alone. If you feel a sudden ache or relief or confusion, write one word in the comments right now. A single word like relief, anger, or unsure. If you can begin with a phrase, start with "when I was small," and something will shift. Reading other people is a form of repair because it names the experience and gives it a witness. Your comment may help someone else feel seen. Why does the child step into that role, biologically and relationally? The attachment system seeks proximity and safety. Bowlby described that children become exquisitely tuned to the emotional availability of those they depend on. If maternal or paternal regulation is absent, the child adapts to restore equilibrium. This adaptation is not choosing, it is response. The nervous system learns to downregulate adult distress at the cost of its own needs. That trade-off creates a pattern where asking becomes frightening and autonomy feels risky. The vocabulary for this includes words like survivance and reenactment you might find in therapy notes. Validation matters because naming the behavior, parentalization, reduces self-blame and opens a pathway to change. There are two moments of tension that most people who grew up silent recognize vividly. First, the moment of exposure, when the child realizes they cannot make the adult safe no matter how hard they try. The room goes still, the air tastes metallic, the light on the wall becomes sharp, and the child counts failures like coins. For some, the chest tightens, breath shortens, a small sound like a sob or a laugh that is not a laugh that is not a laugh slips out and is immediately covered. The internal narrator says, "You failed, you are to blame," and the child puts on the mask again to collect the fragments. It feels like an earthquake inside the
small ribs. A second moment of tension is the first time as an adult you try to ask for help and someone you trust cannot meet you. The voice in your head remembers every small sacrifice made as currency and calculates that asking will cost you everything. The palms sweat, words stick to the roof of the mouth, and time slows as if the world is waiting for you to decide whether to speak or to fold silence into the next task. When you do speak, the reaction could be indifferent or kind. Either way, the old learning surfaces and you must choose a new response. Practical pathways exist and they are usable today. Start with witnessing. Name what happened to you in neutral language. Sit for 5 minutes, look at a childhood photo, or close your eyes and say out loud, "I saw you, I will listen." Try a brief breathing exercise. Inhale for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6, and notice how the body remembers to calm. Practice boundary experiments. A small step is to say no to a request that feels draining with a short sentence. "I cannot do that right now," and watch what happens. Seek a therapist like Dr. Patel who understands attachment and parentification and consider trauma-informed approaches. Create micro-rituals that enroot you. Make a cup of tea with intention, place a small toy on your shelf as a signal to your inner child, and allow yourself 10 minutes of uninterrupted play or rest. Find community. Find a friend like Jenna or a support group where stories are traded without shame. These are not overnight fixes, they are seeds. In closing, know this: you were made silent by circumstance, not by design. That silence kept you alive, and that same adaptation can be softened by care. Recap the steps. Name the history, witness the child, practice breathing and small boundaries, seek community and professional help when needed. Ask yourself today, what would my 8-year-old need from me right now? And answer with an action, however small. If you tried the comment exercise earlier, consider leaving one more word about how it felt. And if this video was useful, subscribe to find other practices and stories that hold the slow, steady work of repair. You get to learn how to be seen and how to ask without apology. Imagine for a moment a house with a window open. The air moves in and out easily, the kettle whistles, and no one is waiting for you to fix the weather. That image can be your aim and your practice. You learned to stay silent to survive, and now you can learn to speak in safety step by step with gentleness and steady witness.